Hey class, can continue with where we left off with quadratics. So just a reminder what quadratic is. So again, review the notes on this. What we're gonna do next, it's we're gonna put together different skills that we need to know in order to be able to graph a quadratic function. So what we're gonna be looking at, it's at something like this, where they give us a quadratic function and they're asking us to factor the quadratic function. So factor the quadratic function. So what does that mean? So um, let's write this function down, and then we'll figure out what they're asking us to do. So factor a quadratic function. And again, quadratic function in the form of, if I use function notation, f of x is equal to a x squared plus bx plus c. So that's the form of a quadratic. So this example we're doing, goes example 1. F of x is equal to x squared minus 2x minus 3. So we're gonna factor f of x equals x squared minus 2x minus 3. So notice that this is very simple, 3 steps. So we're gonna use the Xbox method. So sometimes when we're factoring quadratics, I like to use the name of Xbox method. And this method is very, very, it's like a recipe. If you follow, like, the steps doesn't change. So it's only 3 steps. And again, this is the first time we're doing it, so you didn't have a lot of practice on this. So notice that if I write the general form of a quadratic beneath it, notice that if I match it, I know where A is, I know what B is, I know what C is. So that's the first thing. I recognize your A, B, and C. Step 1, what's A equal to? What's B equal to? What's C equal to? That's always step number 1. So in this one, notice that A is a number always in front of the square term. So the number you don't see in front of the x squared is that invisible 1. So right there. So A is 1. B, very clear, is -2. And C is -3. I'm done with step number 1. So like I said, it's only 3 steps. That was step number 1. Step number 2, we set up the x. That's what we call the Xbox method. And on top is going to go A times C, and in the bottom is going to be B. So which A am I talking about? Well, the A I'm talking about is this A. And what C am I talking about is this C. And what B am I talking about is this B. So notice that we have everything that we need. So A times C means 1 times -3, and 1 times -3 is going to be -3. That's it. A is 1, C is -3. If I multiply those two together, 1 times -3 is -3. And B, what's B equal to? B is equal to -2. That's it. So now I'm going to move on to step number 3. I'm not done with step number 2, but I can start setting up step number 3, and this is where the box comes from. This is the box part. So in the box, this part of the box is always this part of the equation, which is this right here. So the ax squared always goes in there. So in this case, it's 1x squared, always, always, always. This part of the box is always C. And in this case, C is -3. And in the other two boxes right here, this one and this one, uh, we need to know, go back to step number 2 and figure out two numbers. So this is the question. So like I said, we weren't done with step number 2. So step number 2 says, now that we have this set up, this is what we have to find. This is the two questions you need to ask yourself. What two numbers multiply to give -3? And question number 2, what two numbers what two same numbers add to -2? So I need to find two numbers. When I multiply, it gives me -3, but when I add, it gives me -2. So guys, I've been doing this for a while, and this is my experience. If you're good at your multiplication skills, then you tend to find those numbers, fairly fast. If you're not good at your multiplication skills, it's gonna take you longer. But again, you can use any source, any tool you can. So think about it. What two numbers when you multiply gives you -3? So one, maybe -1 times +3. So I'm gonna put it on the side. Normally I don't do this, but just to check, well, I know that -1 times +3 gives me -3, so that's what I want, good. But what happens when I add -1 plus 3? Well, -1 plus 3 is gonna be +2, and I don't want +2, I want -2. So those don't work. What's another choice? Maybe -3. I'll do it on the side. So -3 times +1, that's going to be -3. And what's -3 plus 1? It's negative. So notice that works. So the numbers that work is -3 and +1. So see how we have two spaces? We got this one and this one. So again, the nice thing about this method doesn't matter where you put what. So I'm going to put -3 and 1 right here. So now I know what's missing inside the box. So I know the only difference is this, that when I put in there, I need to add an x. So what does that mean? Oh, this is -3x, 1x. So this is where you're gonna realize some things that come together about the video should ask you to watch in Khan Academy and multiplying binomials. So here's the area model. Remember the area model for multiplying polynomials? So here now we're going the opposite. Factor is to find what two things multiply to give me a specific product. Here we're looking at what two binomials gives me this one right here. So again, you use your intuition. What times what gives me 1x squared, and when I say what times what, I'm talking about this part right here. Whatever this is times whatever this is has to give me 1x squared. If you think about it, the only option is 1 times x, 1 times x. If you write x times x, that's fine too. So notice that 1 times 1 is 1, x times x is x squared. So far so good. So again, what 1x times what is going to give me 1x. So 1x times 1 gives me 1x. Moving on with the next box. So this 1x times what will give me -3x. So it's going to be 1x times -3. And notice that it even works for the last box. -3 times +1 gives me -3. So notice that it works for everything. So now this is how I'm going to read this. So now I found the two factors. Here's one of them, and here's the other one. So that means that f of x equals to x squared minus 2x minus 3 factors into f of x is equal to, so again, I'm going to look at, doesn't matter what you look first, I'm going to look at this one first. So this will be, remember when there's no number in front means plus, so it'll be 1x plus 1 times the other binomial, and again this comes from the area model, which is this one, one x minus 3. So that's it. So that's what it factors into. So in this set of problems, this is what you're going to be working on. It's just factoring, and then I'll let you know how is this going to help us into when it comes to graphing the quadratics. So x squared minus 2x minus 3 factors into parentheses x minus x 1x plus 1 times 1x minus 3. So that means if I was to multiply these right here, it would take me back to that, which is what we're doing in the previous lessons. Let's do another example. So let's say I got a function g of x is equal to, let's write out x squared plus 6x plus 8. So again, this is my suggestion, so write it down. So I'm going to write g of x is equal to a x squared plus bx plus c. So again, notice that everything matches. So if you do it, it's very easy to see what a, what b, and c is equal to, and then you're going to need that for the steps on top. Step number 1. So, think of when we did this in class when we're doing the y equals mx plus b, how we would write down the m below, mx plus b on top of the equation to match the m and the b. Same thing here. So step 1, identify a, b, and c. Again, if you don't see a number in front of it, it's an invisible 1, so notice that a is equal to 1, b is equal to 6, and c is equal to 8. So now we're going to do step number 2. Set up the exponents. A times c goes on top, b goes in the bottom. So a is 1, b is a is 1 and b is 8. So 1 times 8 is 8, and b is 6. So now I'm going to move to step number 3, which is set up my box. So remember, the first part of the box is always the first part of the equation. Always, always, always. So it's going to be, instead of putting 1x squared, I'm just going to put x squared. And the last part of the box is always the last part of the equation, which is c. In this case is 8. So remember, to fill in the other two boxes, the other two spaces, we need to go back and find those two numbers first. Again, the same two questions from above. What two numbers when I multiply gives me 8, but when I add gives me 6. So what two numbers when I multiply gives me 8, but when I add gives me 6. And like I said, If you're good with your multiplications, you tend to move faster. If you're not, then again, use whatever tools you can to figure this out. So two numbers, when you multiply, that gives you 8. So if you're saying 2 times 4, 2 times 4, is that equal to 8? Yes, it is. And what's 2 plus 4? Is that equal to 6? Yes, it is. So what is that? We found two numbers. So again, doesn't matter what you put first. So I'm going to put 2 and 4. So notice that 2 and 4 works. So now when I put it back in the box, the only difference, I'm going to put 2x for x. So let me get rid of this since, and now work your way out. Remember how this is back from the area model. So if you remember, how did you get x squared? So what times what will give you x squared? The only option is x times x. So x times x is x squared. So x times what will give you 4x is going to be 4. X times what is going to give you 2x is going to be 2. And then the last box, notice that 2 times 4 is 8. So notice that now I know how this works. Again, read it like this and read it like this. Remember, there's a number, if there's no symbol in front of the number, it means it's a positive. So that means that this function g of x is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 8 factors into g of x is equal to, so I'll set up my parentheses, x plus 4, x plus 2. Okay, so we'll do one more example. A little bit more complicated. So we're gonna call this one again f of x. So f of x is equal to 2x squared. 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. So notice here, it's going to be a little more complicated, but then again, they exist the same. Notice that if I write the general form, f of x is equal to a x squared plus bx plus c. And if I try to match it, everything matches nicely. So step number 1, identify a, b, and c. Notice that here a is equal to 2, b is equal to 3, and c is equal to 1. Step number 2, set up the x. A times c goes on top, b in the bottom. A is 2, c is 1, so 2 times 1 is 2. B is 3. Step number 3, I'm going to set up the box. And again, in the first box is always the first part of the equation. In this case, notice that is 2x squared. And in the last box, it's always c, which is 1. So now let's find the two numbers that should go in here by asking the same questions. What two numbers when you multiply gives you 2, but when you add gives you 3. So if you want to think about it, you can pause the video and then check if you Not sure, you can just again, I'll give you the work with me. So two numbers, when you multiply gives you 2. Think about that. When you add gives you 3. So if you say 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 plus 2 is 3, there it is. So I found the numbers, so I'm going to put 1 x here, 2 x here. Now work my way out. So again, notice that I'm going to find the factors. So what times what will give me 2x squared? So here you have to be careful, because if you think, well, x times x, that's x squared. But inside the box I have 2x squared. So notice that you have to think about it. What times what will give me 2x squared? So 2x times x is 2x squared. So x times what will give me 1x is going to be 1. And 2x times what will give me 2x is going to be 1. And notice that it works for the last box. 1 times 1 is 1. So now I know how this factors into. So again, here's one factor. Here's the other one. So that means that f of x is equal to 2x squared plus 3x plus 1 factors into, so instead of my parentheses, x plus 1, 2x minus 1, 2x plus 1, sorry. So I'm going to give you some practice on this. Again, decide a factor um, quadratics, and we'll see how this helps you find up the gravel problem. Okay, guys? So again, if you have any questions, send me those messages. I'm updating grades. I will be sending information about the final later this week. And if you have any questions, please also make sure that you join my office hours on Fridays. If you need the code, let me know the password. I sent you guys that message a while back. So stay safe, guys.